Hi guys, I'm Kat.
And I'm Emma.
Thank you for joining us and welcome back to the Dead Parent Club podcast.
Each week, we're going to be talking about what it's like to be members of the Dead Parent Club and chatting to brilliant guests about their grieving journeys.
We'll also be hearing from people far more qualified than us that can give you some top advice on navigating this new normal.
So strap yourselves in and welcome to the Dead Parent Club.
And today we are joined by someone who will be covering an extremely important and potentially daunting step in your grieving journey, the funeral.
Yes, Lee Solomon, a funeral director from Lilies Funerals, is on to give a guide on everything to do with funerals, the dreaded word.
Hi Lee, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us, and especially for looking very smartly. Have you dressed up for us or for work?
I'd love to say it's for you, Emma and Kat, but unfortunately it was work.
Well, you look very smart all the time. Do you know what? You stayed in the outfit. You could have got your pyjamas. That's what I would have done if I was doing a podcast from home. So thank you very much. For anyone who's just listening to this, Lee is wearing a waistcoat, tie and a white shirt, looking very smart. So Lee, I guess the first place to start is, what does a day in the life of a funeral director look like?
Wow, where do I start with that? It could be anything. So family could call us out to bring one of their loved ones into our care. I could be washing and dressing one of our residents for a family coming in to view them in the chapel of rest, or I could be doing endless amounts of paperwork either for funerals or for the business related. Yeah, it could be absolutely anything, and it changes day to day.
Two things that I just want to point out there that I find really interesting. One is the kind of way that you say bringing their loved ones into your care. Two is calling them residents. I find that such an interesting terminology. I think because we're doing this podcast, we're quite like bringing the dead parent into the funeral home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. But your language is very much as though
very soft.
Yes, very gentle. Is that part of the job that you are? Are you taught that, or does that just come naturally with time?
Do you know? I would love to say I've been taught it, but previous to setting up Lilies, I was never in the funeral industry. My background's marketing and business development,
Wow.
so it's just the ethos that we have at Lilies.
What made you go from marketing?
The big question.
Yeah,
it's the one on everybody's lips right now.
Yeah. What was the decision making behind that?
So I could go on a very long story on this, but I'll keep it short for you. My best friend, who I've known my whole life, grew up on the same street and everything. He went into the funeral industry from 16, and we kept in touch. And when we was 21, we said, if we ever get the opportunity, let's open up a funeral home together.
I suppose it's not a dying business, is it?
Yeah. Hey,
pun intended.
He went into the funeral industry from 16, and when we was 21, we said we'll open up a funeral home together. I'll do marketing and business side. He head up the funeral side. And we got the chance when we were 26, and we opened up. And because there was only two of us, we had to do everything ourselves. So I quickly was doing everything funeral side as well.
One thing I was thinking actually before this is an undertaker and a funeral home,
are they the same?
The same thing. So when you have the undertakers come to the home, is that from
so? Are you the person that would come to a home and collect a body?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Do you know what, Lee? Right, Kat, you'll have all these questions. You listening right now, even if you think you wouldn't ask these questions, you'll definitely be thinking them. Right. First thing, were you scared? Were you ever scared when you first got into it? Because I would not like to be around a load of dead bodies.
Yeah, so people are so shocked. We had signed the contract on the lease for the property before I'd ever seen a dead body before.
Wow.
So I didn't know how I was going to actually be when I saw my first deceased. But I remember the gentleman, the first deceased that I looked after, and my first act was giving him a shave. And the biggest thing for me that shocked me was not that they weren't moving or just looked asleep. It was the temperature. So as soon as I touched the deceased, he was so cold, and it was just not. It was something that I wasn't expecting. So, and that's one of the main things now, because I remember that experience so vividly. When families come in to see their loved one in our chapel of rest, it's one of the things that I point out. Say, if you do want to hold your loved one's hand, I will warn you, it will be cold, and I just don't want you to be scared or shocked, just to try and reassure them. And so that
it was
helps
something
a lot.
it was something I noticed very quickly after my mum died. Within minutes, like, she felt cold to touch, and it's so funny. I think of the Undertaker's. I say funny. I mean, it wasn't. I think of the Undertaker's coming to the house, and it, like, from my perspective, it's like a whirlwind of, like, somebody dies, call number, half an hour later, Undertakers are in house, bodies in bag outside of house. Like, it seems very, like, sterile and, like, not personal. But obviously your job at that point isn't to go in and be like, hey guys, and start having a conversation. Like, what was it like for you the first time that you went to somebody's home where somebody had just passed, and that all those emotions?
It was hard you just want to hug them, and you want to sit down with them. To be honest, you want to try and bring them back to life. You want to do as much as you can, because it's a horrific time for them. But fortunately for me, I was with Nathan, who had 10, 11 years of training, who was such an amazing professional, talked the families through every single step, that what we were going to do, and then the next steps, what they had to do. And that we would call them as soon as their loved one was back in our care, just to reassure them. So I was very fortunate that, even though I wanted to do as much as I can, I kind of was a shadow behind Nathan. He took the lead.
I know when my mum passed away, I was really, like, I don't know if this is normal or not, but I was really protective about people who didn't love her, going into their care, because I was like, I know she's passed away and she can't feel anything, but I was like, that's my mum, and you've got her when she's vulnerable, because she's literally lifeless. And I remember it was my friend at the time who was one of the people looking after her. Oh, wow. And I remember ringing him and changing my mind a million times, going, I want this ring on that finger, and then can you put her in this, and I was thinking, upon reflection, I must have been an absolute nightmare. But to you, and I just want you to be honest here, because it's not a right or wrong answer. When people come to you, is it another dead person, or do you ever think about their personality, or do you talk to them when they're there? You know, what are you like with them?
I have to talk to them. I feel,
oh, wow.
If I'm giving someone a shave, and when you have to get up, if it's a gentleman, you have to get up close into his nose hair, and or if you're trimming his ear hair or something, just to make him look really smart, I always say, oh, sorry, Mr. Smith, or and I'm just doing this, and I'm not sure if that's me respectful for them, or it's a comfort thing for me.
Yeah, it must be very quiet, like.
Not when you've got the radio in the background.
I don't picture you just, like, in a cold room, sat in complete silence. It's dark.
Yeah.
Like.
But do you know what? I quite like the idea of you having, like, Radio 1 or Capital One or something on the background. Here you go, Mr. Smith. Do you like this one? I like that.
Resident DJ today.
Yeah.
Is Lee.
Do you, though? Because I guess, you know, when you are faced with death every single day, do you have to find coping mechanisms for that?
It's a really deep question to answer. When I first started working with death, I wasn't emotional, and I thought that I actually was really scared that there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't crying with every family. But when I got professional counselling, just to talk to someone to make sure that I was okay, and they said, yeah, you're being professional, you've got your professional head on, and they said there will be a time and you will be emotional. And there was 2 funerals that were very close to me, not personal friends or family. It was the situation. There was a gentleman, his wife had passed, very close age to me and my wife, And then there was another funeral where unfortunately it was twin babies, and at the time my wife was pregnant with twins. So even talking about that now, I can feel it, and because I could relate so much. Oh my God, I was in absolute tears, bawling my eyes out. But knowing I could go through that, knew I knew or know that I am normal.
I suppose it's something that people could say to me and you is, how can you sit and listen to people telling their deepest, most personal and heartbreaking stories and not cry? I know a lot of my friends say to me, like, how do you not cry every time somebody's talking to you about it and blah, blah, blah. I don't think it's the fact that you become desensitized to it, but I think you do kind of have like your work head. So I have like my podcast head and then like my kind of normal self head.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't mean that you're not empathetic. It doesn't mean that your heart isn't breaking when somebody's telling you that story. It's just,
sometimes you can hurt and not cry as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Another quite, deep question just off that. Sorry, Lee. We like to get deep on this
fire
podcast.
Away.
We're all about. Since working
I've got my tissues ready anyway.
Can you pass them over here, please? Since working in the industry, has it made you feel like face your own mortality more? Do you think about your own life?
Is your funeral prepared down to the T?
Yeah.
No, like so I've got everything in place for if I die. So I've got the life insurance is in place just to make sure, because my family's sorted. That's what I think. Working with death, that's what I've realised, is making sure my family's looked after. But working with death every single day, it makes me appreciate life so much more. And I know that's such a cringy, cheesy answer.
It's true.
We love that.
But the things I used to argue about with my wife, the silliest, stupidest things, I couldn't care less now.
Yeah.
I'd go straight over my head, and arguments or things that you think before you'd get really wound up about. I'm like, well, I can't influence it, so why do I care? I can have an opinion, but I don't need to get emotional about it. And
you know where to put your energy.
Yeah, 100%.
For somebody listening that might have literally, sometimes I get people messaging that their parent has literally died a few days prior. So they are literally in the middle of the funeral process. Can you kind of talk us through the stages from your point of view of like what people should do as somebody has passed, and then how you can support them through organising the funeral and kind of boxing all that off, and from a financial point of view as well, if people don't have as much money as they probably would have liked to have. I don't know how, because funerals cost a lot of money, don't they? So what you have in place to support people that don't have much.
Yeah, of course. So if someone was to pass, if it was at a hospital, they will be guided to the bereavement office to speak to them, and the bereavement office will support them through the initial medical questions that need to be answered. As soon as they've done that, or if someone's passed away at home or in a care home, as soon as they need to speak to a medical professional to come out to verify that the deceased has passed. As soon as that person has been out to verify, they can give us a call, and we'll come out to the house or to the care home to bring them back into our care. And Emma mentioned earlier about being very protective of a mum at home. When we come out to someone's house, we always say, if they're comfy in bed, we always say, can we take her or his pillow and the sheet just to keep them more comfy? And if they've got a blanket on, do you want the blanket to stay or do you want it to come with? Just those little things just to make them feel more comfortable and reassured. And we always say, do you want to stay in the room while we get mum or dad onto the stretcher, or do you want to go outside? We just try and make them as comfortable as possible. Once that person is in our care, we talk them through each stage of registering the death. Now, with COVID, there's a lot of restrictions that have come into play where you don't go to the registry office anymore, or you don't go to the doctors or the hospital. There's no face-to-face visits. At the moment, it's all done electronically. So we talk them through the process of doing the pre-registration form online, informing the doctors. If it's a hospital, the hospital will send off the medical paperwork straight to the registry office, and then the registry office will give the families a call to go through the registration process. That's the process in Birmingham. It does vary from city to city. You might have to phone up the registry office if you're in a different city apart from Birmingham. And then from there, we're sent what's called a green form, which is a certificate for either cremation or burial, which is what we need to give to either the crematorium or the cemetery. And then we say to the families, whenever you're ready, or come in to see us, and we'll go through arrangements. When they come in, we'll make them a nice tea and coffee, go through all of the arrangements, what will happen between when they come in through to the day of the funeral. Then we'll go through all the details of the day of the funeral, from from the morning all the way through to when we return the family to whatever address they wish. And then we talk them through the process. If it's going to cremation with ashes, we'll be bringing their ashes into our care, and they can collect them from us, and we give them a call at every single step. Something happens, we call them just to inform them, and just so they know that we're working quietly in the background.
You know, what's interesting listening to this is that it's really made me aware of how much my dad shielded from me after my mum died, because I was 20, so from all intents and purposes, I could have been as involved probably as I wanted to. But I don't even remember when I going to the funeral home. I don't remember any of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I went and saw.
Oh, did you? Wow.
I went and saw Mum. You mean to see them?
Well, yeah, to see them, but also I didn't even contemplate going to see my mum, because I didn't even think of that being really a thing.
Yeah. I just remember I couldn't see Mum's feet, weirdly.
Not seeing the feet. On the inside of a coffin, we have a frill that goes around the inside. Now, the frill doesn't look tidy if it's tucked behind someone's shoes. So we usually lay it over the feet or the shoes.
There you go.
So just so it looks neater and tidier. That's why you might not remember seeing Mum's feet.
Well, do you know what? That's an absolute education. 13 years on, I finally understand why. Thanks, Lee.
Do you leave the loved ones in your care dressed the whole time that they're there?
As soon as they're dressed, yeah, they stay dressed.
Okay, interesting.
So when someone comes into our care, if they've got pajamas on, they'll have their pajamas on. Then we'll wash them, dress them, place them into either the clothes that the family have brought in, or if the family have requested a white gown or any coloured gown, get them dressed into the gown, and then they're laid in the coffin, and they stay like that until the day of the funeral.
Lee, I know this is like an intimate question to ask, but right, just help me here, because it feeds back into the protectiveness thing. Like, how do you wash a dead body? Where do you have a bath? Like, what do you do?
It's basically a flat bath. So it's called a mortuary table, and around the outside of the mortuary table is like a drainage area. So we get a cloth hot with water and soap, and wash the body, and then any excess water obviously drips into the tray and drips out through the drainage hole.
And I feel like bodies change when they pass away, like change shape and stuff. I'm not massively wise on that. I've just seen my mum and nana die, but I feel like bodies seem to like change shape. Or like, I know, for example, when my mum was poorly with cancer, her whole body went skeletal, and her tummy, I think it was the pill she was taking, was like really big. Are you completely unfazed? Like, as in, there's a body in front of you. Are you completely unfazed because you've seen all these changes a million times over?
The same if it was a traumatic death, I think, as well, from an accident or something like that. Like, how do you respond to that?
I'm never unfair. If it's been a tragic death, I look at the deceased, and I never look going like, ew. I never think like that. I think more, like, it's more sad, thinking, oh, it's so sad that they've passed away that way. Or if the body has changed to irregularly, so if it's through bloating or like fluids or anything, it's part of our job.
Yeah, it's your everyday.
We've got
It's like
we've
a doctor,
got a process
isn't it?
that we need to go through to rectify or make it better. Or
Can you still trump? Is it right that you trump when you're dead?
when you're
You
deceased,
twitch, don't you?
you can
Do you?
trump a lot.
Can't you twitch? Like, do you see
We've never
things
had
of, like,
Oh
twitching.
my God, thank God. I would
that would-
shit myself if a dead body started twitching in front of me.
You might do that, but you might
Yeah.
you're more likely to do that than twitch.
Yeah.
So you had to, oh my
it
God.
releases because all your muscles relax, don't they?
Yes. So do you know when you were saying about bodies change when you've probably never seen or you hardly have seen a relative or a friend lying down asleep. You see people either sat up, they'll be relaxed, or walking around. You never see someone lying down. So they may look totally different lying down, but then you've also got to think because the heart has stopped pumping, the muscle. So someone's got really strong cheekbones, for cheeks from smiling so much all the time, because the blood isn't pumping into those muscles anymore. They're really relaxed. Their cheeks might look so different, and you'd be used to that.
That explains my nana.
Well, did she look quite gaunt?
I only went to see my nana because my granddad wanted to and my brothers didn't want to go. And I was like, do you know what? I owe it to granddad. He has to go with somebody. But her cheeks, were just so gaunt. And Nana had like quite chubby cheeks for a lot of her life. And I don't know, I'm sure that the people had tried to do their best, but her smile just looked really big, like sewn together. But I imagine that was to try and hide something else. So I fully understood it, but I was like, Nana, that's not you.
they do look completely different, don't they? Yeah, definitely.
But you know what? I also think, Lee, I'd admire your honesty on all that, because we do not talk. I know I've been petrified going, oh my God, one day I'm going to die and people are going to see me bolloco on a slab and have to wipe me. And I have felt sorry for people like you in advance, hopefully a long time in advance. And I've wanted to know, am I going to shit myself? Will I trump? Will I wet myself? I feel like these are the things people actually want to know, but no one A, dares ask, B, probably doesn't have a funeral director.
Yeah.
And also, hats off to you for being so honest about that, Lee, because we need to know this kind of stuff, because also it adds a bit of humour to it, doesn't it?
The thing is, it's not a bad thing. It's natural. It happens. It happens a lot. It's just not talked about. And we find in this generation, previous generation, death was not talked about, and it leads to such bereavement makes it so much harder because we don't talk about it. If we talked about it more openly, which we are now, which I'm so happy about, it just makes bereavement easier. Like I'll take the Irish for instance. They celebrate death amazingly, and yes, they grieve, but they grieve together and they speak about it. It's open, and it's with my family when my granddad passed. My nan was in such a horrible place, and she went through bereavement counselling. And if she hadn't have gone to that bereavement counselling, I don't think she would still be here now. And I raised money for the company that did the counselling, they're a charity, and I do it every year just because I'm so grateful. But it's because we don't talk about it, and my nan still won't talk about her death now. If I try and mention it, she's like, "Oh no, I don't want to talk about it." And it's
what did your family
sad.
all say then when you became a funeral director?
I don't think they'd believe me to start with. Because I was lived in Birmingham, moved up to Leeds, was at university, then started my career up there, met my wife up there. So I never really kept my family up to date with random stuff that was going on. Then when it actually all become reality, I said, "Oh, by the way, guys, open up a funeral home." Oh, what?
What?
Yeah.
How would your family choose your funeral home if they died? For example, your grandma.
My family members have chose me, so we've done. Yeah, we've done
On that,
funerals.
Working in that industry, Lee, do you feel more reassured about the fact that when your loved ones, heaven forbid, do pass, do you feel more reassured about what happens and the way they're going to be looked after?
Yeah. I'd only want them to come to me. If I had to do anything, and I'd want to do everything, I'd just have that honour to be able to do it for them. Yeah, I'd never really thought about it, but yeah,
yeah. And that in many ways is a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
that,
it is.
It's
something a lot of cultures do, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a lot of different cultures, they prepare their family members' bodies themselves, don't they? And
not
they have their own rituals.
I'm not sure I could do that.
No.
I think
it takes a special kind of person.
Yeah, you are a special kind of person, Lee.
When I've got my professional head on.
Yeah.
Something that I want to ask you, Lee, is how have you found the past year working through COVID and having to change the way that you do things so quickly and so dramatically, and also not being able to give those families the support that you would usually have been able to give them?
It genuinely has been horrible. Really, really horrible. So when we opened Lilies, me and Nathan said, when families come into us, we'll sit down and say, how can we celebrate Mum's life? What can we do for Dad's funeral to make it special? And when the restrictions came in, rather than saying that, we were sitting down with families and saying, due to restrictions, you can only have 6 people attend Mum's funeral. Because of restrictions, you can't sit next to your loved one to console them. It was horrible, really horrible. It was really, really difficult. And to be fair, we're not out of the restrictions yet, fully. The light is at the end of the tunnel, but there was one family which sums up how bad it was. And I know we started this with a really nice, light-hearted jokeness, and I'm sorry for bringing the
this is what it's for.
Yeah.
But this family, lady had come into me, and her husband was in a care home, and because of the restrictions, she hadn't been able to see him, and I think it was for 6 weeks she hadn't seen him. He was taken really ill, and they wouldn't. I think he was COVID positive. They wouldn't take him, or didn't take him in time to the hospital. But the care home phoned up and said, we don't think he's going to make it through the night. Do you want to come and see him? But you can only see him through the window. So they're outside the window of the care home, just watching someone pass away. And because they were COVID positive, when they came into our care, we couldn't have an open coffin. So we had to have a closed coffin. So
she never saw him.
This lady hasn't had that closure of seeing them. She asked, and she said, is there any chance you can I can have his wedding ring back? And one of the rules to stop the spread was that we can't, any COVID positive disease, but I took it upon myself, fully PPE'd up and everything, and disinfected everything, the room, and I took the rings off, disinfected them, and then I said, I'm going to keep them for, I think it was 72 hours at the time, I said, and then you can have them back just in case.
Oh, bless you.
So I did that, and when she saw those rings, that was like her kind of going, oh, he has gone. And so someone that's spent, I think it was like 50 years of her life with him, to not have that closure at the end, it was horrific. Absolutely, that was one of the hardest days. And there were other stories that families have been through similar to that throughout the whole of COVID. It's just, it's not been nice.
We had Helen on the podcast whose dad died of COVID at the very start of the pandemic, and a similar experience. They couldn't have an open casket. They couldn't see him. We went in lockdown when he went into a coma. So the last thing he knew was normal life, and then they weren't allowed to see him after that, and he died a few weeks later. And I just think for people like you during the past year, you know, we think about the grievers and people that have lost somebody, but for people like you whose job it is every day is to try and make that process a little bit easier for the people left behind, I can imagine it's been really difficult trying to offer that service and trying to do it in a personal way and support them.
Yeah, it has been really difficult, but then the families they've just lost a loved one. They're worse than us, so we don't like. Oh, it has been bad, but I never moan about it. In the grand scheme of things, we were so lucky, fortunate to be able to have a job to go to through all this. A lot of people out there lost jobs and were in financial difficulty. So, yeah, we're just glad that we could help.
Were you ever worried about your own well-being this last year with COVID?
I haven't had time to.
No, but genuinely, Lee, because a lot of people will have not even thought about the fact that funeral directors, if you're the place where that, you know, that person with COVID has gone, how do you feel in that position?
Every deceased that came into our care that was COVID positive, I was never scared once, and I haven't been. That might be down to me blindly being a bit naive. I might be a bit stupid thinking I'd survive anything sort of thing. I'm indestructible, but never thought.
I think
about
that's
myself.
a good thing though, because I think it's nice knowing that even the people that died from COVID, people weren't scared to be around them in death.
Yeah. That they were treated with the same level of care and respect as the other people. Have you seen this sounds really clinical. Have you seen a rise in demand this last year?
I get asked this question a lot, and it's really difficult for us because we're 5.5 years old now as a company. We've been growing year on year with word of mouth and everything. So it's really difficult to say how busy we have been, but I can look at through the waves. Through the first wave, our busiest month, we conducted 42 funerals, and then this wave, the busiest month, we conducted 40. On average, before COVID started, we were doing about 20 to 25 funerals.
That's a 100% increase nearly, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah. So
either you're very good at your job at marketing, or
COVID's
it's been a hell of a year.
How much will I pay for a funeral on average, Lee? How much? Because I know Kat asked you, but if you were putting a figure on an average funeral cost, what are we saying?
Sorry, you did mention about finances. I do apologise. So when we first opened, we had like this big long shopping list basically of what do you want, and it was just kind of tick it all off and then add it all up. But what we found was that families have two types of services. They either have a simple funeral service, which is the hearse and the coffin arrive at the crematorium, and everyone meets you there, and then they go back to the wake themselves. And so we put that package together. Or they have the hearse, a limousine, a coffin, order of services, flowers for the top of the coffin as well. And then if the ashes are coming back into our care, they'll have a scatter tube or ashes urn, or if it's a burial, they'll have a grave marker. So we put that package together as well and call it the traditional funeral package, basically, so families can go, oh, that or that, but they can chop and change if they want, add things on, take things off. So for our simple funeral package, we charge 1,495. The traditional, we charge 2,095, and then the crematorium costs or the burial costs are on top. So our local crematorium, it's about we've got 3, so the average is about £900. Doctors' fees and ministers' fees, so 282. So you're looking at 1,182 on top of whichever package you choose. So around about 2,700 for a basic funeral.
What happens if people can't afford a funeral at all? I don't know what happens then.
So if they really can't afford a funeral, then they can put it to social services, and social services will pay for a funeral, but the family has to show that there's no one that can. There's no next of kin that will is willing to pay. Or
it's nice to know that
there is that backup if you're really struggling to do that.
Yeah, because that would be really stressful for people with no money.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If you've got no money, do you know what? You might be completely unprepared for it, because if you're, well, at any time in your life, you might not be expecting that someone close to you is going to pass away, or you might have just had to buy a house, or you might have, put out a huge sum of money and not have the money available. So it's good to know that there are options for those people, because the last thing you want when you're grieving the loss of a loved one is the financial worry on top of that, isn't it?
For social services, it is really strict criteria to get that, like the full amount paid for, and then it is a very standard funeral, and it's at a time and date at the discretion of the funeral director that has got the contract with social services to do that. If you are a normal person and you're on benefits, you can apply to the DWP for a grant, and they give you about £700 or £750 towards the funeral director's fees, and then they'll pay for the third party fees, which are either the cremation or burial fees as well. So it usually works out about £1,400 or £1,500 towards a funeral, a cremation.
Makes me feel very privileged knowing that I didn't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I completely agree. Right. Lee, is there anything else that you would like anyone to know? That, maybe
that's
a myth that you'd like to bust?
Or a myth,
the coffins aren't reused. The handles aren't taken off.
Thank God for that.
Do you know, it's really difficult because I know everything that goes on. If someone says, "Oh, does this happen?" I think, well, why would you think that? But that's because I know it. But because if people that aren't obviously in the industry every single day, they don't know. So it might be actually me to turn that back on you two and say, is there anything that you've heard of or maybe thought of?
I just have a general question, because I think I want to be cremated when I die. Yeah, I know. I don't ever get to speak to funeral directors.
It's not an everyday thing.
So I'm sorry for asking a lot of questions, but also
no, that's cool.
I've spent 13 years wanting to know the answers to these, Lee, so it's a lot of built up over time. If I get cremated, does every part of me go in that? Like, does the coffin go in?
Oh yeah, when the curtain
closes, do you go straight into the furnace, or what happens there?
So that's a very good question. So when when the curtains close, usually within a crematorium there is a holding room behind the service chapel. The coffin is taken through into the holding room, and then the coffin stays as is with the nameplate, with the handles, everything. The coffin is not opened nor changed in any way. If there's a request for the flowers to stay on top of the coffin, they will stay on top of the coffin. If there's not, then they'll go to the flower garden outside. But then once the cremator is ready, the doors will open and the coffin is charged in.
Charged in? Like, do they run with it?
Pushed in.
Here we go.
It's called, so the
terminology
there, Lee, is
the terminology.
I just had visions because my nana got cremated. I'm like, Evo, come on, Eileen.
I had this vision. I remember vividly the curtains closing at Mum's the crematorium, and you have this impression that suddenly it just goes up.
Yeah, I did. That is exactly. I was like, when Nana went through the curtain, I was like, beyond there's just loads of flames, and I just imagined her hair getting burnt and stuff. That's all I could. Yeah. Does it happen on the same day? Like, do you go, behind the curtain, here I am, next stage, push? Is it like right there, or is it another place? Does the body get driven somewhere to be cremated?
No, so the all of our local crematoriums, the cremations happen the same day.
And is it one body at a time?
Yeah, but it's one body at a time, and there's usually two. There's multiple cremators, so depending on how busy the day is, they'll either heat up both cremators, and then if they're not so busy, they'll just heat up the one and use the one.
Wow,
you've got to have real strength of character, I think, to be the charger, to be the person pushing the body into that, knowing that that is the closing stages, that on the other side, they are going to be their ashes. I'm sure, like you say, it's their job and you get used to it. But for me, the finalness of that is incomprehensible.
Yeah, it is a very final. I will say as well, if, with people listening to this, if they are really intrigued to know what happens, most local crematoriums will do a tour.
Wow! Oh, really?
Yeah, they'll walk you through. Well, they should do a tour anyway. They'll walk you through everything and show you everything. And if you wish, you can even look through the little like porthole to see someone that's being cremated.
Wow! What, your loved one? You mean?
Well, no, like if you're on a tour.
So,
you just see a random person going in. Like, do you mean?
Yeah. If that's what's happening.
Yeah. They wouldn't show it going in, but they'd show. You can see someone that's being cremated.
And then at the other side, do they have like a big spade to get them out, or what do they get the ashes out with?
A big rake.
Yeah.
Wow.
They just drag them out.
It's a purpose-built rake. Yep. So at the end of a cremation, every single bit that's in that cremator is raked into like a holding like canister for it to cool down. Once it's cooled down, it then goes to the cremulator, which grinds the ash down into finer small particles. And because if a loved one has had a metal knee, metal hip, or pins or anything within their body, a magnet is then put into the ashes to retrieve the metal out.
Wow.
And then why does that come out in a lump or something?
It won't burn.
It won't burn, you mean?
No, the metal that's in like hips and stuff, that doesn't melt down because it's so well engineered. But like rings and stuff, that will either discolor or there'll be maybe pins in the body. They could melt.
So a ring, if my nana had a ring on, that will have been made up part of her ashes then?
It will have been. It'll be so once the ashes are all raked out, and the magnet will take out the ring, and then all of the metals that were in the ashes then get sent to a recycle centre.
Wow. That's genuinely fascinating.
I can, after this conversation, if I live locally, I would 100% go to your
yeah.
Honestly,
can we come and have a tour, Lacey? I'm being serious.
To be honest, if you wanted, you're more than welcome to.
I find
can we?
Find it. I would. Yeah.
Lee, can we do this, please? I know you're very busy and you've got more serious things to be getting on with than entertaining me and Kat, but I would love to have a tour. I would genuinely love to see it, almost for a bit of closure, because I never knew what happened to Nana behind the curtain. I've never, even your description is good, but I can't picture exactly what it looks like, and I think it would be quite reassuring to see it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, anyone's more than welcome. And as well, if when someone's choosing a funeral director to look after the loved one, if you are unsure, ask to see behind the scenes, because everyone should be open and honest about the facilities that they've got and the care that they give. So if any families are really scared of letting go of their loved one, ask as many questions to make yourself feel comfortable, because it's not a nice time, and you want to. Well, that time's got to be made to go as smoothly and feel as comfortable as possible.
See, if somebody died now at home, because I have no idea at home really who the funeral directors are. I don't even know who did my mum's funeral. I'd be looking through. Oh, I said looking through the yellow pages. I've got a phone these days. I'd be on Google.
1992
call. Local funeral director near me. Like, it's such a weird thing. I think now I will actually make an active effort to maybe do a bit of local research.
Yeah, I think the only reason I know who they are is because of Mum and Nana dying. But yeah, I think that is, thank you for the invite, Lee. What we'll do is we'll have a Dead Parent Club day out. We'll invite all our listeners and we'll all come to your funeral home, if that's all right, for a tour.
Tour dinner.
Yeah.
I'll get the sandwiches in and the teas and coffees.
We can plan our funeral.
Thank you. Yes, amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Do you know what? What a human being you are, Lee. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody ever says this to you, but honestly, you are a 10 out of 10 human for doing your job and for being so humble and so lovely about it.
Yeah, you are one of life's good ones. Thank you so much. I really mean it. Thank you.
I really struggle with compliments, so I'll say thank you.
So thank you, everybody, this week for joining us on the Dead Parent Club podcast.
Yeah, remember, you can reach out if you want to talk to us, if you've got any suggestions or questions on areas that you want us to cover in the future.
You can drop us an email at hello@deadparentclub.co.uk or find us on Instagram at Dead Parent Club Podcast, on Twitter at DPC Podcast, and on Facebook at Dead Parent Club.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.